What's on your playlist right now?
As I move into my class,
Go to guilty pleasure food.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
My name is Mauricio Ernesto Ramírez. I'm an interdisciplinary scholar who focuses on the intersections of Latinx art, public art, and activism. From 2022 to 2024, I served as a UC President's and Andrew Mellon Foundation postdoctoral fellow here in the Chicano Studies Department at UC Davis. During my tenure here, I focused on writing my book manuscript titled Painting Solidarity, U.S. Central American Murals of San Francisco. This work examines the origins and significance of murals created in solidarity with Central America, produced in San Francisco's Mission District from the 1980s to the present. Currently, I am an American Council of Learned Societies postdoctoral fellow.
Mauricio, welcome to Face to Face.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to do it. Yeah, we're excited to have this conversation with you and hear more about your research and your murals. I think it's something the audience is really going to enjoy. So,
Thank you.
So, sounds like so you grew up in the city in San Francisco.
San Francisco.
And the murals that you grew up around really impacted, what you do today and your outlook. So, is there a particular one that kind of stands out, or a set of murals that stands out and impact your writing about murals?
Yeah, good question. So, when I first sort of found, this cluster of murals in Balmy Alley, and it's in San Francisco's Mission District, so off of 24th Street. It's a small, relatively small alley that in 1984, a group of around 36 artists created around 27 murals in this alley. And as an undergrad, I became more interested in knowing about the history of murals of San Francisco, but particularly Central American murals, because I'd written or read about Chicano, Mexican American murals. And then I realized, wow, there's Central American murals, and they're still here. They're still like in San Francisco, in Balmy Alley. And I wanted to know just a little bit more. I was like, let me dig a little bit deeper. And it was through looking at one specific mural that I remember. It's Ray Patlan's mural. It's called Camino al Mercado, A Walk to the Market. And in this mural, I just remember showing it to somebody. It was an activist who wasn't a muralist, but the activist was like, oh yeah, there's like a hidden gun in there. Or actually, she just said there's a rifle in there. Like, I love that mural. And then I was sort of astonished, and I was like, what is she talking about? And I really had to look at the image. And at this time, all I had was an image, right? The physical mural isn't there. It was painted in 1984. It's already like painted over. And then I see the rifle, hidden within sort of the scarf of this lady. And you could just see like the rifle, the butt of the gun, sort of the tip of the gun. And it was just a moment where I was like, oh, there's a lot more here to these murals than I think, And so then it was at that moment I realized, interviews was kind of a key sort of method, I guess, to sort of conduct this research, because just looking at the murals, I realized, I could come up with my own sort of theories or like significance, but I realized asking the artists themselves gives me a whole other perspective and insight into the murals.
That's interesting, because some artists don't want to interpret for you, right? They want to let you interpret for yourself, and others would like to tell you what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
So, and art really has an important role. I think I'm curious as to what you think the role of art is in raising awareness, inciting change regarding social issues of the day.
Yeah, so, I think, so these are specifically, I look at community murals, right? So that's even its own sort of genre within murals in general, because sort of interior murals, right? But these are public murals. And, I think one of the first community murals ever was the Wall of Respect in Chicago. And ever since then, a lot of urban cities, inner cities, barrios across the United States started creating their own murals within their neighborhoods. And so I see it as a form of activism, and I think a lot of artists see it as a form of activism. Many artists don't have formal training. They go ahead and just sort of paint murals, and maybe it was house paint or with whatever sort of materials they have. And as time with evolution, right, there's been, better like acrylic paints that you can, that sort of withstand the weather. But yeah, like thinking about sort of the beginning or the beginning of the community mural movement here in the United States, it's definitely come from this grassroots sort of place where mostly people of color have painted these murals within their neighborhoods.
So I understand when you were an aspiring muralist back at Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, you painted a mural with your friend, one of your earlier works. Tell me about that one. Then tell me about something you're working on now. What would you paint today?
Okay. So this is 2008, 2009, I think. Obama had recently won the election. I remember that was a big point because we put a portrait of him in the mural. And me and my friend, Rafael Arana, who's a really close friend of mine, also a muralist and now interior designer, right, and artist. We both sort of came up with this sketch, and we pitched it to Oaks College. Oaks College is one of the colleges in UC Santa Cruz. And we got funding for it through, Oaks College, and we decided to paint this mural, which was about sort of our own sort of struggles, I guess, growing up in sort of the inner city. So we have this sort of contrast of like sort of inner city, like sort of violence, happening on one side, and on the other side, sort of this positive light of somebody graduating, of sort of protest movements, and that's where we have portraits of many leaders here in the United States. A couple, I don't want to name them all, but like Angela Davis is there, Obama, Gandhi's on there. So, we were coming from a place in San Francisco where we were creating murals. So when I arrived to Santa Cruz, I was like, I really want to paint a mural on campus. And I think that would be that's how I could leave my mark, right, is through painting a mural on campus. So that was the inspiration for that mural. And then really ever since then, I created a bunch of other murals in San Francisco with, again, community murals. So none of them were really like my mural. They were always in collaboration with youth for the most part, or with my friend Rafael. And then I sort of stopped towards the end of college. I became really intrigued into researching these murals and figuring out there's like a whole gap, a huge gap on Central American murals of San Francisco specifically, but Central American murals in general. So even murals that were created in Central America, there's a gap. And I wanted to learn more, but specifically here in the United States, right? Where or why have we sort of learned so much about Mexican American and Chicano murals when there's this sort of rich history of Central American murals in San Francisco? So that became sort of my, sort of like my passion instead of painting or drawing. So honestly, I haven't painted or drawn in quite some time.
So interesting. So how's your experience as a faculty member here in Chicano Studies and your colleagues here, how has that impacted or supported your work?
Yeah, so I was I was thinking about this story because my connection here, even through the research, has been through the Chicano Studies Department. It's been through, like I told you, we were painting this mural. A friend of Rafael knew that Malaquías Montoya here was painting murals in the Chicano Studies Department and had this long history. And us being from, UC Santa Cruz in San Francisco, we had no idea what was going on in UC Davis, right? So this friend asked us to come all the way to Davis, drive, from Santa Cruz to Davis, and meet Malaquías Montoya. And so we go, and Malaquías actually couldn't make it. So his son, Maceo Montoya, who's also, part of this creating murals and faculty member here in Chicano Studies and in the English department, he came to meet us, and he showed us a tour. He gave us a tour of all the murals that they had created with UC Davis students. So we went to Woodland. We saw some here, but the majority at that point were located in Woodland. So that was sort of fascinating. Like it sort of opened our eyes. Like, oh, this is like, like a whole program. It's similar to what we were sort of what we learned at Presida Eyes Muralists, this other organization in San Francisco, which I give a lot of credit to because it's the reason why me and Rafael are really into murals, is because they gave us a place and a space for youth to paint murals. So that's been going on since the 70s, and it's a nonprofit, organization that's just sort of give young people tools to paint, and mostly mostly sort of youth in San Francisco. So I give them a huge credit. And so seeing Maceo, Montoya, and Malaquias and all the work they did here just sort of inspired me. And to sort of make this a longer story, is in that meeting I meet Carlos Francisco Jackson, who is no longer in this department, but he had already created a book on Chicano art. And he was writing about the same murals I was writing about, the murals in Balmy Alley. And I was just, surprised, one, to meet him in person and to realize he's an artist academic. And I was like, oh, maybe that's, there's some sort of inspiration there. I was like, maybe I can, write and do research. Yeah. And so he actually gave me, it was through email. I mean, we met in person, but then through email exchange, he gave me contact info for some of the artists that he interviewed. And those artists are, the artists I interview for my research. So actually, some of the first research connections I made was through UC Davis. It was through, Carlos Francisco Jackson. So, yeah, it's a kind of, full circle moment now that I'm here. So.
That's a great story. We remember Carlos well and fondly. So, so you've written or you're writing a book now.
Yes.
Written a book. And
I'm writing a book.
You're writing it.
Right.
So you've been doing these interviews as well, right? So anything about the interviews that stands out, a message you want to convey or something that you learned?
Yeah, that I sort of just fell into it. I think the interview was sort of this other point for me as archiving. So, just archiving to me was really important. To see these photographs was one aspect of it, but to hear from the artists themselves, and we were talking about this earlier, was just thinking about how important it is to center the voice of the artist, right? And a lot of these artists are activists as well. So knowing their story to me was sort of paramount to understand the full picture as to why did you want to paint, murals in solidarity with Central America? What motivated you, right? And a lot of these artists are not of Central American descent. So I found that the aspect of solidarity was really important to think about really just humanizing people, right? It's like thinking about, like, why am I going to go out and paint something public on a wall, right, for everyone to see? And yes, it's a form of protest, but at the same time, it is visual art. So it becomes part of the sort of visual landscape. And that's what makes the Mission District so unique, too, a place that I wasn't born or raised in the Mission District. I was actually born, I was born in San Francisco, but I wasn't raised in the Mission District. But all the schools I attended were close or were in the Mission District. So the Mission District holds a close, sort of space for me and to my heart. It's really a place where there's a lot of creativity, and that creativity has been there really since like the 1970s. So it's an exciting sort of place to be.
It's a really great place to visit, too. I enjoy it over there, yeah. We have a little game that we play on Face to Face. We call it Hot Seat.
Okay.
Basically, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm looking for a one-word, one-sentence kind of rapid-fire answer. Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What mural or muralist do you find most inspiring?
Oh, José Clemente Orozco.
Okay. Tell me
one
about
of the Mexican muralists. So they're known as the Great Three. It's José Clemente Orozco, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and Diego Rivera. Okay. Most people know Diego Rivera.
I've heard Diego Rivera.
But his contemporaries are these other two artists. And José Clemente Orozco, his style just sort of speaks to me. It's a little bit more fluid. It's not as like clean and cut. It's a little bit dirty. It's almost like very sketch-based. And so his artwork sort of just relates to me.
Okay. So if you could have a conversation with any artist of the past, who would it be?
Good question. It would be Salvador Dali.
Salvador Dali?
Yeah, Salvador Dali.
We actually have a couple of Dali pieces in the Chancellor's residence.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You have to come over and see him.
I knew a professor who knew him personally, and he said he's totally like a persona. Like the way he acts in front of the media and interviews is not the way he really is. So I was like, oh, that kind of, because he seems a little like arrogant and a little, his whole thing was surrealism, right? So,
right.
I would just like to meet him.
Yeah. Favorite travel destination?
Yucatan, Mexico. Yeah.
Is that close to home? Is that
no? So my parents are from El Salvador.
El Salvador.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, you said that. That's right.
I was born here. But my parents are from El Salvador. No, but it's just a special place. I mean, the ruins, the cenotes, the beaches, everything is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a special place.
What's your comfort food?
I'm gonna go with pupusas.
Okay. What is that?
Pupusas. They're typical Salvadoran food.
Okay.
So, they're kind of, they're unique to El Salvador. And I think other Central American countries make them as well. But they're specific to Salvadoran. So if you go to a Salvadoran restaurant and order a pupusa, they're sort of like different ways to make it, but usually there's cheese, beans, maybe pork or some sort of meat,
Okay.
and they're inside a corn tortilla. So they're really thick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will try to remember
Yeah,
and
try
try
them
one.
out.
Yeah. Okay, I ask this question of every guest. What artist is at the top of your playlist right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Mos Def, who now goes by Yasin Bey. Yeah, I have these moments where I just sort of go back to the past. And so right now I'm sort of just listening to like all the Mos Def, sort of greatest hits.
Interesting. I actually met him once.
Oh, wow.
I was like in an elevator or something, and it wasn't a conversation. I just like recognized him. Hey, it's Mos Def.
Oh, cool.
But it was very cool.
But did you say hi to him?
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
And he spoke back. It was very,
cool.
very nice guy. Okay, now it's your turn. You can ask me any questions you'd like to ask me.
Yeah. So what public art piece or mural specifically, I'm leaving this pretty open, it could be a public art piece or mural, do you admire?
So I'll give you one sculpture and one mural. The sculpture I like is in Chicago. We were talking about Chicago. The kids call it the Bean, but I think it's called Cloud Gate. Right?
Yeah,
So, my daughter and I visited it when she was going to school at Purdue, and we'd meet in Chicago and hang out. So we both like that piece of art. In terms of murals, this is going to be obscure. No one's going to know it but me or a few of my friends. But there's a mural on the side of a bank near Georgia Tech where I went to school in Atlanta, and it's a picture of the first 3 African-American students who enrolled at that university.
Oh, wow.
And they enrolled all at the same time. But the big deal was they were there without a court order and no violence. This was rare in the South in those days. So, and I kind of like that picture of those 3 kind of holding books and talking on campus on the side of a bank.
Is that mural indoors or outdoors?
It's outdoors.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. What else?
So I'll be very specific. What visual artists, so not like music or what visual artists do you admire?
So in terms of painters, I really like this guy, Ernie Barnes, if you've heard of him.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'm old enough to have watched Good Times, the TV show, and JJ was an artist, one of the characters. JJ was an artist, and the real artist, he pretended to paint. The real artist was Ernie Barnes. He painted all these really very cool African-American pieces, one of which is the cover of a Marvin Gaye album. And it's
Right.
at a
I've seen that
party.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite pieces. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that fact.
Mm-hmm.
The last question I have is, how has this podcast transformed the UC Davis community, and has it created any unity for the campus?
That's a great question. I would like to think the answer is yes. It gives an opportunity for me to learn more about what's happening on campus and learn the personalities and the people, but it also gives the audience a chance to hear about all the really cool things that are happening at UC Davis and the people that are making them happen. And so I think it's building community, and I know that people look forward to it and tell me they've seen it and they like it. And so I hope that it's having a positive influence on the campus. So, yeah.
Cool.
All really good questions. You were really thinking about this ahead of time.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sitting with me today and having a conversation. Enjoyed meeting you and talking with you. And I want to thank everyone who's watching. We'll see you next time on Face to Face. Go Ags.